Welcome back to the Explainer, everyone. We are jumping right into part 7 of the 8-part tutorial IPv6 Troubleshooting for System Administrators and Technical Support. Now, since you all already know your way around IPv4 network troubleshooting, today is all about upgrading your diagnostic toolkit. We are drawing exclusively from the phenomenal research by Virtualization Options LLC, a Colorado-based technology research, education, and advisory organization. We're going to tackle those really complex IPv6 anomalies you're bound to see as you support your organization's migration. So, let's dive straight into the advanced diagnostics covered in Chapter 7.
Look, if you've spent any time at all working in dual-stack environments, you've probably hit that absolute wall where IPv6 failures just feel like random ghosts in the machine, right? One user connects perfectly, another drops completely, or a session just hangs for literally no reason. I completely validate that frustration. To an IPv4 veteran, these issues seem utterly illogical. But today, we are going to expose the exact structural reasons behind these failures, because they aren't actually random. They're highly specific edge cases born from the fundamental differences in how IPv6 actually operates under the hood.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our structured approach to solve these headaches today: DNS and name resolution, the PMTUD black hole, VPN leaks, taming rogue router advertisements, and finally, the golden IPv6 troubleshooting rules. All right, Section 1, DNS and name resolution.
So DNS is essentially the interface between humans and IPv6, right? Which makes it a really frequent source of subtle, hard-to-diagnose failures in a dual-stack world. What's wild is that this specific problem has absolutely no equivalent in the IP4 world. Because IPv6 relies so heavily on proper AAA records, a split DNS or a VPN conflict means different users get totally different results, just depending on which DNS server happens to answer them. If an external DNS server answers a query meant for an internal resource, the IPv6 connection silently fails, while IP4 might actually still mysteriously work through some legacy NAT. It's crazy. So when users start reporting these random connection drops, your absolute first step is to verify exactly which DNS server is answering and what records it's handing out. As a sysadmin, you want to run these exact commands. Use dig plus short AAA against your internal DNS, then your external DNS, and finally your VPN-provided DNS. By forcing the query to each specific server, you strip away the operating system's DNS cache entirely, and you can pinpoint exactly where that bad AAA record is coming from. Once you've found the discrepancy, the fixes are straightforward but absolutely critical. You have to ensure your VPN is actually pushing the correct internal DNS server address down to the client. Plus, make sure you configure explicit split DNS rules within your VPN client for your internal domains. And finally, go physically verify that the VPN DNS server has the right AAA records populated for your internal resources.
Moving on to Section 2, the PMTUD black hole. Now, the classic symptom of a PMTUD black hole is this. Small packets succeed perfectly, but an SSH session, a large file transfer, or a really heavy HTTPS page inexplicably hangs right after the TCP handshake. To test this, just run a ping 6 with a size of 100 bytes. That's small enough to fit within all link MTUs in the path and requires 0 path MTU discovery, so it'll succeed. Then run a ping 6 with a size of 1400 bytes. If that larger ping fails or times out, boom, you have officially confirmed a path MTU discovery failure. Somewhere in your network path, a router is trying to send an ICMTv6 packet too big message back, and a firewall is improperly blocking it. To fix this, the research gives us 2 viable options. The primary, and definitely the preferred fix, is to permit ICMPv6 Type 2, that's that packet too big message, inbound on all firewalls in the path. You just have to allow proper PMTUD to function. Now, if you don't control all the firewalls in the path, your alternative fix is to configure TCP MSS clamping on your router's interface, say using IPv6 TCP adjust MSS 1440 on Cisco gear. Oh, and a quick, strict reminder from the source material. The IPv6 minimum MTU is 1280 bytes. Never, ever configure anything lower than that. All right, Section 3, VPN leaks and blocks. This is a massive headache with legacy clients. Think older Cisco AnyConnect, legacy IPsec clients, or OpenVPN setups that don't have specific IPv6 flags.
These older clients fundamentally misunderstand dual-stack environments. When they encounter IPv6, they either bypass the VPN completely, which creates a split tunnel leak exposing the real IP, or they block IPv6 entirely without tunneling it, breaking all IPv6 sites. You basically have two viable paths to fix this. Option A is to properly tunnel the IPv6 traffic by configuring the VPN to push a /0 route, enabling IPv6 on the tunnel. If your infrastructure just isn't ready for that yet, option B is to explicitly and cleanly disable IPv6 on the client side, so the OS gracefully falls back to IPv4 instead of just hanging in a broken state.
Section 4. Taming rogue RAs. So the crucial point here is that rogue devices, often it's a Docker container or a carelessly cloned VM, can silently hijack your routing by sending a router advertisement with a lifetime of 0. This tells clients to stop using their actual gateway. And unlike IV4 DHCP leases, there is no explicit gateway renewal in IPv6. Hosts rely entirely on these periodic RA refreshes. To track down the rogue device, boot up Wireshark and use the filter icmpv6.type=134. This is your ultimate detective clue to find the source MAC address and physically trace it back to the offending host.
Once you find it, you've got to lock down your network. If it's a rogue Docker instance, just add IPv6 false to your docker/daemon.json file for the bridge network. Honestly, though, the absolute most robust defense, no matter what the source is to enable RA guard on all your switch access ports. It stops rogue arrays at the hardware level before they can even pollute the segment. Alternatively, you can always isolate your VM and container traffic to a completely separate VLAN that doesn't touch the physical host network. And finally, Section 5, the golden IPv6 troubleshooting rules.
These are the foundational paradigms you absolutely must respect in dual-stack environments. If you ignore these, you are going to go in circles. First up, remember that a dual-stack failure can be completely invisible unless you explicitly test for it. Web browsers are sneaky. They'll silently fall back to IPv4 and totally mask a catastrophic IPv6 routing failure. You have to isolate the failing protocol first. Build the habit of using explicit commands, curl-6 to test your IPv6 path, and curl-4 to test your IPv4 path before you draw any conclusions.
I am going to read this next part verbatim because it is just that important. Never block ICMPv6 entirely. Back in the IPv4 days, paranoid firewall admins loved dropping all ICMP traffic to hide hosts. Well, in IPv6, ICMPv6 is not optional. It is literally the fundamental heartbeat of the protocol. If you block it entirely, you break neighbor discovery, you break PathMTU discovery, and you break multicast membership. The network will literally just cease to function. To be incredibly specific, here is exactly what your firewalls must permit for the network to simply function. Types 1, 2, and 3 handle your essential error signaling and PMTUD. Types 133 through 136 cover router and neighbor solicitations and advertisements. These are 100% mandatory for hosts to find their gateways and resolve addresses. And finally, Type 137 allows for better route redirects. Seriously, do not drop these packets.
Rounding out our golden rules, remember that Neighbor Discovery Protocol entirely replaces ARP. So to view your neighbor cache, start using IP-6 NA. Also, NDP uses multicast heavily, which means your switches require MLD snooping so you don't flood the network. Plus, seeing multiple addresses on an interface, like a link local, a global unicast, and a temporary privacy address, is completely, totally normal behavior. Please don't troubleshoot that as an error. And finally, document your ISP prefix delegation. If your ISP silently changes your delegated prefix, static configs will break invisibly. Always track them in an IPM system.
I want to take a really quick moment to thank our source for this explainer, Virtualization Options LLC. Their comprehensive structural analysis provided the exact blueprints for today's advanced troubleshooting toolkit, and it really takes us far beyond basic network diagnostics. So, as we wrap up part 7 of this tutorial, I'm going to leave you with a crucial thought to chew on when you get back to your terminal. Are your legacy firewall configurations and that old IPv4 muscle memory actively breaking the fundamental rules of your new IPv6 deployment? Go review those ICMPv6 rules, check your MTU paths, and make sure your infrastructure is actually ready for a dual-stack reality. Keep learning, and I'll touch you in the next explainer.